Welcome to episode 11 of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast. A bi-weekly look at cybersecurity, including top products, the latest trends, news, expert tips, and interviews with top security industry company representatives. I'm Kevin Baxter, and I'm joined by my Firewalls.com colleague, Andrew Harmon.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew. As we dive into a different featured topic each episode. New episodes of the podcast come out every other Wednesday, so subscribe or follow on your favorite podcasting platform to get the latest one. And feel free to leave a comment or email us at podcast@firewalls.com with feedback or questions. Without further ado, let's jump into our featured topic and introduce our guest for this episode.
If you've listened to previous episodes of Ping, you've probably picked up on the fact that cyber threats are out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, or even 366 days this year, and everyone is a potential target for online attackers. But while that sounds scary, what does this mean to you? You know there are things to worry about, but what specifically is going on with your network? What are their greatest vulnerabilities? Unless you're the victim of a successful attack, it's hard to know.
But Fortinet is doing something about that, offering the Cyber Threat Assessment Program. To discuss the program, including the latest iteration, which focuses on SD-WAN, we welcome our guest for this episode, Fortinet System Engineer, Ben Bolin. Ben, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. And so to get started, we like to start with a little bit of an introduction about the person that we're talking to. So tell us a little bit about what you do with Fortinet.
Yeah, so I've been with Fortinet for about 2 years now. I'm a pre-sales systems engineer, so I do all the pre-sales within my assigned regions. So I advise customers on what equipment they should be looking at, sizing it out for the appropriate boxes, and mainly implementing CTAPs.
Great. That is the subject for today with the Cyber Threat Assessment Program offered by Fortinet, as you said, commonly referred to as CTAP. Can you give us a bit of a general overview of what this program is?
Yeah, so the best way to think about the CTAP program is as an assessment methodology. So the major reason we would want to implement a CTAP is it's going to help with the prospects in identifying their gaps in their existing security architecture. So the way this works is we're going to use a Fortinet product, such as our MGF firewalls or our email gateway, and it's going to be configured in such a way that it can discreetly observe real-world traffic. And then after a period of time, we can generate a report that will show you the value that Fortinet can deliver to the environment from a security perspective. And now we have a better understanding of the customer security posture and can help fill those gaps with the appropriate Fortinet product.
And you mentioned there are multiple kinds of CTAP programs that you have with email and firewalls involved, but particularly more recently, you've just implemented an SD-WAN type of CTAP. So what will organizations get out of this specific CTAP for SD-WAN?
So for the SD-WAN, we're looking at the specific applications. So we're looking at, whether that traffic is internal or external. We're looking at where those resources are being consumed. We want to learn more about, the top applications and, the bandwidth usage across the different categories, whether that be the VoIP, collaborative, social media. And we can verify that performance and usage of the application and make sure that they are operating in accordance to the corporate SLA and use policies.
And so at the end of this program, the network admin will receive a sort of summary report of your guys' findings. What kind of things should people be looking out for in these reports? What are they going to see in here?
Yeah, so like I said, we have the three different ones, the NGFW, the CTAP for email, and the SD-WAN. And they more or less follow the same structure. One thing that you'll see across all three of the reports is the security section. So this looks at the current security effectiveness of the environment as it is. So this will highlight things like if there's any malware that's gotten through, any vulnerability attacks, host trustworthiness. So this shows a network admin what their current solution is missing from a security perspective. There's a productivity section that looks at the kind of traffic being generated, such as what applications are running, what ports and protocols that they're using. The email CTAP will look at the type of email. So it'll label it as this is how much spam you're seeing. This is how many of those emails are newsletter. And finally, there's a utilization section that will show exactly what kind of resources and bandwidth is being used in the environment, so that will assist when sizing out environments appropriately on the CTAPs.
So it does give you a pretty good picture of your network situation. Why is it so important for a network admin to see what the vulnerabilities they're experiencing are?
Well, no one wants to be in the news for the wrong reasons. So the truth is, unpatched vulnerabilities can lead to breaches. Depending on what type of breach this is, it can hurt an organization in different ways. So for one, it could hurt the reputation of the brand. If an organization is compromised and they have sensitive information stolen, such as the customer's credit card information, this will lead to a loss of trust from the customers, which will lead to a loss of revenue. So this is one of the core philosophies here at Fortinet. We want to identify areas of security that are lacking and close them before real harm is caused. I kind of believe like in the IT world, there's this very reactive mindset. Something breaks, let's fix it. But Fortinet really pushes for more of a proactive approach to security.
Yeah, and we've talked several times on the show. You don't want to be the one holding the bag when the attack arrives.
Right.
We've talked SD-WAN on the podcast plenty of times, and we know it's a growing market for Fortinet. You guys are really the pack leaders there in several ways. So for people that may not be quite familiar with that, can you give us a brief overview of Fortinet's secure SD-WAN and who can benefit from it?
Yeah. So the goal of the SD-WAN is to ensure that business critical applications have a reliable path to their destination. So we're looking at those hybrid WANs. We know exactly which ones were reliable enough to send the traffic, which ones are not. And we do this by performing the health checks on those multiple WANs, whether that be the actual ISP, the MPLS, 3G, 4G. The FortiGate will look at latency, jitter, packet loss, and use that information to determine that best path. And not only is it determining what path is reliable, but we're also incorporating security as well. We're looking at a single box that performs both the SD-WAN checks and the next-gen firewall solution all in one box. As for organizations that would benefit from the SD-WAN, if an organization has multiple WAN connections, they should seriously consider looking at an SD-WAN. When we look at how organizations traditionally architect their WAN connections, they would have, the normal internet access, maybe like an MPLS line or a private line. However, these solutions can be very expensive and have subpar experience for the users. So this is where the Fortinet SD-WAN helps. We're able to open their network to direct internet access and allow organizations to reap the rewards of those software as a service applications. And by displacing those archaic lines, we're reducing the TCO for an organization.
And going back to the CTAP for SD-WAN in particular, is this something that, an organization that may be considering adopting SD-WAN would benefit from doing, or is it better for somebody who already is running an SD-WAN solution to jump in at that point?
I'd say it would be a great benefit for those new clients getting started with the SD-WAN. So when a client goes to a consultant and says, hey, we want to implement an SD-WAN solution, but we really don't know where to start, the SD-WAN CTAP is a great place to start. We're able to see that external traffic. We're able to identify those applications that are using those WAN resources. So this will help map out those kind of rule sets that we want to place down the road.
Okay, and so for people where SD-WAN may not be in their near or distant future either, you also mentioned that you guys have both an email and a FortiGate program for CTAP. Can you highlight the focus of those?
Yeah, so those are both looking at identifying those security gaps in the current solution. So the CTAP for NGFW will look at the network traffic as a whole, see exactly what's getting through, where are the shortcomings of the current firewall in place, whereas the CTAP for email is looking specifically at that SMTP traffic. So it's going to look at how much spam is getting through, even though you have a spam filter on, how many of those are newsletters. Is there actually any malware going on? Is there impersonation analysis going on in the environment?
So we talked about the three types. You've gone over the basics of what somebody can expect from taking part in a CTAP, but a little bit more in depth. What's the step-by-step once somebody actually signs up and says, I want to participate in the CTAP regardless of what type? What is that step-by-step process and how long does it take? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so they should contact their Fortinet reseller or consultant. They'll need to gather some information to get started, where the CTAP's being installed, some network configuration. So it's very, very basic stuff. Then we will install the unit. The box comes pre-configured, so there's no additional configuration on that. It's plug and play. And like I said, the program is designed to be non-invasive, so there will be no disruption of traffic. With a CTAP for email, it's even better because there's actually no hardware to be installed. You just configure a VCC on your emails to send it to our FortiMail in the cloud. But we normally allow those devices to sit in the environment for about 3 to 7 days for NGFW and CTAP for SD-WAN, and then about 2 weeks for CTAP for email. Then after we let it sit for that amount of time, we'll be gathering that information to generate the report. We'll get together in a meeting with the network admins and any C-level executives that may hold a financial stake in these findings, and then discuss those findings with everyone so that we can look at those shortcomings of the current solution.
Great. This sounds all very straightforward and it provides a lot of value. What kind of commitment would people be looking at if they signed up for this program?
That's the best part. There is none. The goal of the CTAP is to look at the individual's prospect's need. We don't want to look at, selling them 5 different products that they don't need. We want to show them here that we are looking at a solution that best benefits them and their environment.
And so you mentioned you've been working on this program for quite a while. Have you encountered, a lot of customers who are quite surprised by what they see in these reports?
Absolutely, yeah. I've had cases where they have what they thought was full functioning NGFW firewalls in place. And then when we look at the report, there's actual malware, there's ransomware, there's botnet activity going through the environment. So it is lacking in some cases. And that's what the CTAP is hoping to highlight is if there is somewhere that's lacking, what is it and how can we fix this?
You guys definitely have done your best to make this as least invasive as possible. For anybody with hangups or they just want to know more, where would you direct people to go learn more about the program?
Yeah, so they should talk to their Fortinet rep or reseller. And also on the Fortinet website, it's the Cyber Threat Assessment Program under offerings is where they can find more information.
One other thing I wanted to reiterate a little bit, something we mentioned in our intro and you touched on a little bit earlier, but a lot of times people don't get the visibility into their vulnerabilities until they're actually the victim of an attack. So how does this really help head that off for people and, save them so much time on the back end?
Yeah, like I said, it's always best to be those proactive, take that extra step. You identify ransomware, you can see exactly which one of your hosts are the least trustworthiness of those devices, which devices are going to these questionable domains. And so that way we can, quarantine that device off the network, do a full assessment of that device. And so there's absolutely no chance that we're going to get compromised.
And we've talked about the vulnerability side, but this also helps with just kind of optimizing the network setup that people have.
Exactly, yeah. We can see, exactly how much bandwidth is being consumed by each of those resources. We can see peak times. We can see when things kind of mellow out so that we can schedule, hey, these are good times to do maintenance windows.
All right. Ben, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we'll pass along all the information that you provided in terms of how to sign up. We'll have that in our description and in our blog post as well.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you.
And now it's time for headlines. In this regular segment, we discuss a few top news stories in the network security world and what they may mean to you. So let's jump right into headline number 1. Will SD-WAN solve IoT's toughest questions? Like these abbreviations, don't you?
Yeah, there's four of the acronyms in that one headline? Yeah, it's nice.
Threw in some, yeah.
Saving time.
So this story immediately caught our eyes, I think, when we were skimming through the news this week. It ties together our episode topic with something we've discussed quite a bit, Internet of Things security, with experts suggesting SD-WAN may be the key to deploying and securing IoT devices on your network. What did you pick up from this one, Andrew?
Right. We've talked about IoT security in so many episodes, wondering what the solution is. Maybe SD-WAN is the one. So the idea here is that SD-WAN allows admins to target specific individual IoT devices, and completely unique profiles are assigned to each one, sort of treating each new device on the network as its own traffic type. So things like thermometers that might be internet connected could be its own traffic type, separate from phones, from PCs, from TVs, etc.
And this isn't just a theory. It's Apcella CEO Mark Casey. Apcella actually works with a company that deploys water meters and utility meters. And so they actually do something like this already on a pretty large scale. So basically, to get into the nitty gritty, he's saying applying an SD-WAN allows you to treat traffic very specifically. And instead of the traditional architecture that involves forcing device traffic back to the data center for security, he's actually saying you can manage and process your security at the edge.
Yeah, you can sort of templatize is the word they use it, making different security templates for each type of traffic. And then you'd be able to push those templates out to all the devices on your network from the central location rather than logging into each machine individually and making those configuration changes.
And those templates also make the management side of it easier and large scale deployment. So we're not just talking about the security side of things, but really a massive IoT deployment. If you have a template for the device that you're adding, then you just keep adding and adding and adding. You can have 10 devices, 10,000 devices.
Right. And traditionally, adding a new traffic type, like a new appliance onto a network, you'd have to go to each physical location and log onto machines and change configuration settings. With this, you just sit at your desk at your home office and push everything out in one button click.
Yep, no new back-end hardware needed, just reprogramming the software to deal with the new IoT device or create a template for a new type of IoT device if you're going that route as well. So very interesting thought process here, a different use for SD-WAN than I think we have talked about before. And also, as we said, IoT devices are not so secure. In fact, there was an interesting tidbit in this article from Mary O'Neill with Nokia, who shared that IoT devices represent just 16% of traffic, but account for 78% of malware on mobile networks.
Yes, I believe she also said that an IoT device today plugged into a network, if it doesn't have security already on there, it's going to be infected in 3 minutes or less in most cases. So these are very unsecured devices. And this is sort of a post-fact add-on security through SD-WAN.
So the SD-WAN security side of things is still a little bit up for debate for this, because we saw other experts quoted in this article as well saying that the IoT device itself still has to have built-in security for a true secure situation. But, anything that you can do to counteract some of the vulnerabilities is a good thing.
Yeah, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, so to speak. Yeah, so I guess the question now is, can IoT security be added on, or does it need to be baked in the initial design and manufacturing process? And I guess with this article, we're exploring the added on option.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes, if this is a shot in the dark kind of thing, or if it starts to spread and we see more about this going forward. But we're certainly going to see more about SD-WAN and IoT.
Yes, they're both very much in our future.
Now, time for headline number 2. Ransomware, phishing, and cyber attacks scare business chiefs the most. So we like having surveys of business chiefs, I think.
Yes, they're very important.
They're interesting because they do give you a pretty good snapshot of attitudes. We've talked about recently a little bit better outlook at spending on cybersecurity. And this story really dovetails with that pretty well. So just 7 years ago, a survey by Allianz Global Corporate and Specialty, and I looked that pronunciation up before this, and it's been a little while, so I hope I said that right, conducted a business risk survey, and cybersecurity ranked 15th on the list. This was 7 years ago, with just 6% of CEOs, risk managers, brokers, and insurance experts around the world listing it as a concern. But the same survey just released this year, where did cybersecurity rank?
They were number 1 with 39% of responders citing cybersecurity incidents as their biggest worry for the year.
Yeah, so this is the leadership in businesses around the world. More than 2,700 were surveyed in this go-around, listing cybersecurity as their biggest worry. So from 6% just 7 years ago to 39%, that's several times more.
Yeah, it seems like something might have happened in those years. Several $1 million worth of something might have happened.
Yes, that's exactly the case. Executives are particularly worried, according to the survey, about the cost associated with successful breaches, whether it be paying ransoms for ransomware, which, there's always a few new cases every week, it seems, or recovering from a business email compromise breach. Not only that, they're concerned about the costs after a breach. That could be litigation or other methods to make things right for customers or investors that have been affected.
Yeah, and the ransoms being asked for in these ransomware cases have increased over the years, going from relatively small amounts in the past to millions in some cases now. So these are really big concerns. You got social engineering and phishing and business email compromise representing a very large threat to all these executives. You know, they've got company data on the line that could be exfiltrated. They've got downtime to worry about. So this is very much on their minds.
Yeah, and of course, the email compromise can lead to the ransomware, so they're all connected. Aliens actually says 5 years ago, typical ransomware demands were in the tens of thousands of dollars, but as you said, they can now be in the millions with more sophisticated attacks targeting larger targets, which they weren't necessarily doing as much before. And just interesting to see how that attitude has evolved. They also had another cyber related concern fairly high up, which is new technologies, quote unquote, with the increasing reliance on AI and third party platforms like cloud based as a service type software. Concern, especially stemming from worries of outages of these services, which we've seen a few times in recent years, which also kind of goes back to cybersecurity a lot of times, but a lot of concerns related to tech.
Digital transformation can be a big intimidating thing for an executive who might be very smart in his particular wheelhouse, but maybe cybersecurity is a little outside of that. And so, you know, keeping up with new technologies just in general is going to be a huge fear. You know, like you said, you got artificial intelligence and machine learning and learning everything in nanoseconds. And at this point, it's hard to keep up for a layman.
Yeah, but it's good to know that people are recognizing their blind spots basically now. That's something that 7 years ago, there were still plenty of cyber threats out there.
Right.
They've evolved over the years, but they did not come out of nowhere over the past 7 years. So
one aspect of this article that interested me was sort of how cybersecurity considerations are spilling over into other parts of business, so complicating the process of mergers and acquisitions. You know, if you have two companies coming together, obviously one of them is going to have the worst security posture of the two. And when you begin to merge those companies and the networks, then you have to take considerations into vulnerabilities and who's going to be liable for those. So it sort of complicates several different areas other than just, you know, productivity and uptime.
Yeah, and what didn't really go mentioned here as another cost is the reputation cost. They talked about direct kind of reparations for people who are affected as being an after the fact cost, but the reputation cost is pretty big. If a major breach occurs and everyone hears about it, then you lose a lot of trust in a lot of business that way. And related to that merger side of things, it may make one company think twice about purchasing or merging with another company if someone's already had some problems.
Yeah, I'm sure Equifax will not be acquired anytime soon.
Interesting to note what was number one for the past 7 years was business interruption. So sort of cybersecurity.
It's pretty broad. Yeah. That's, that could be anything from an earthquake to ransomware to you know, the flu. Who knows?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons for a business interruption, but the survey respondents were much more focused this time on cybersecurity as an issue, maybe not necessarily as a business interruption issue, but a major problem nonetheless. So the top 3 risks in Austria, Belgium, France, India, South Africa, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK, and the US included cyber attacks. And in the US, it did take the top spot.
Gotcha.
On to headline number 3. A cybersecurity firm finds multiple vulnerabilities in Tik Tok security. So in this story, we learn that a cybersecurity firm tested the security of Tik Tok and found multiple vulnerabilities that allow for security loopholes and account hacking. So let's back up first. Andrew, are you on TikTok?
I have never been on TikTok. I've only seen negative headlines come out of TikTok, and this is yet another of them.
So for those of you who are not on TikTok, your kids probably are. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. But before we get further into this story, we'll give a little explainer. So TikTok is a video sharing social networking platform owned by a Beijing-based company. Users can create 3 to 15-second music and lip sync videos, which are kind of like Vine used to be, and looping videos up to a minute long. It was the 7th most downloaded app of the past decade. So
yeah, formerly known as Musical.ly or musical.ly, I'm not sure which was American company until they were acquired by ByteDance, who took over. In November of 2019, the U.S. government opened a national security review into the app, specifically focusing on how ByteDance acquired the American company that would later become TikTok. So it seems ever since the cradle, it's had some issues to worry over.
But it is wildly popular. And as we said, the youths are very into it. Your kids may be on it.
If you're over 18, you might not be so familiar.
Though 41% of its users are between 16 and 24. So could be the leftovers. So backing up what the vulnerabilities are. So this is on people's phones. Checkpoint research shows they were able to manipulate code to adjust individual account contents, delete and upload videos, make public previously hidden videos, access users' personal info. They were even able to adjust a text link that users can send themselves to download the app, and instead use it to send malware to any phone number. That's a pretty extensive list of vulnerabilities.
List, especially the ability to change private videos to public. I imagine if you've made something a private video, there's a good reason for that. So, yes, and then obviously the ability to send malware through a link to just about anybody with the app is also a concern.
Yeah, basically, Checkpoint found that everything you can do in TikTok can be manipulated through a number of vulnerabilities there. So got to worry about that a little bit. They do say that they made TikTok aware of the vulnerabilities and the app did patch them. So at least there was a response there, and it wasn't just, hey, we found this stuff and we're putting it out into the universe.
And ignored as it is. So the United States military instructs their personnel not to use this app on government-issued devices, which makes sense considering the demographics it's made for, I'd say.
Right.
But
for a number of reasons.
Yes, they've banned it during deployments for the concerns with app security. Obviously, well-founded, it turns out. So, whenever you've got personnel in a combat zone and with internet connected devices, you have geolocation data, secure communication data at risk. So I think it makes sense that this has been banned from government issue phones.
It does. And, just in general, there can be suspicions between the US and some other Western countries of China. So that's the other piece of this puzzle, as you mentioned before, sort of the provenance of the app and just a general concern that potentially the company that runs TikTok could have ties directly to the Chinese government, which could then be exploited.
So if you've got a TikTok account on your Huawei phone, might be time to upgrade.
At Firewalls.com, we are fortunate to have a team of certified network engineers who offers a variety of services for top security brands, like firewall configurations, endpoint deployment, and expert support, to name a few.
In our Engineers Minute, one of our experts takes a moment each episode to provide a tip or answer a question, and that's where you come in. Leave a question in the comments or email us at podcast@firewalls.com, and you just may get your question answered in a future episode.
In this edition, our engineer Alan checks in to talk about how you can keep management simple when implementing an SD-WAN solution, in spite of the fact that you may have more devices to manage.
You will find that most of the major players out there are lumping in management, and there seems to be a lot of focus on the ease of management, and that by somehow implementing SD-WAN, it simplifies remote site management. But from an architectural standpoint, in the grand scheme of things, we're going from managing perhaps 1, 2, or even 3 gateway devices and routers to now having to manage gateway or edge devices at all of our locations. So it's all really pretty confusing, and it's certainly fair to be confused. We've got our IT managers and our network admins kind of scratching their heads trying to determine how in the world SD-WAN simplifies management aspects. Even more important, how SD-WAN simplifies remote management aspects, because we oftentimes do not and will not have these technical expertise situated at our various remote locations. So in comes the cloud management platforms. So I think it's kind of important when we have these types of conversations to break it out into two parts. Where one, we're talking about SD-WAN and the architectural or IPsec VPN configurations, basically how we're going to be establishing the communications from our remote branch offices to our HQ, and then the management side of things. So oftentimes what we're actually seeing is the conversation being lumped together, which can bring quite a bit of confusion, right? So we're increasing our gateway or edge devices in our remote locations where they didn't used to be and where we're not physically located, yet somehow all of this is supposed to be easier to manage. So the key here is really these cloud management platforms. They're sort of the secret sauce that's going to make all of this possible, and it's important for IT admins and for those performing our routine maintenance and policy management for us to have a centralized console or platform that we can schedule our firmware updates, collect backups, and push out configuration or policy changes, not only to our HQ, but to all the branch offices as well. So the key or the tip is when evaluating or moving away from our MPLS infrastructure or whatever type of architecture you have in place and looking to utilize IPsec VPN and SD-WAN, it's incredibly important for you to find a vendor that also offers a management platform to help maintain your gateways in a single, nice and easy to manage environment.
To learn more about what our network engineers can do for your business, give us a call at 866-403-5305 or go to Firewalls.com/services.
And thanks very much for joining us for this episode of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast. And thanks again to Fortinet's Ben Bolin for speaking with us about the Cyber Threat Assessment Program. Again, you can learn more about it by visiting Fortinet.com/CTAP. That's CTAP. And you can also visit our blog, Firewalls.com/blog. But don't worry about writing this down. The link is in the description. Subscribe or follow now to ensure you get the latest episodes as soon as they are available. And please do rate and review us wherever you listen to the podcast. Visit Firewalls.com for all your network security needs and give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. For Andrew Harmon, I'm Kevin Baxter. We will be back soon with another episode. But in the meantime, we remind you to
Get secure, stay secure.